Welcome back to another market recap on the Ticks and Trades channel. This is for Friday, June 27, 2025. Before the market opened, these were the levels and the game plan that were made available to subscribers. So take a look at the levels and read through the game plan. So there was a zone between 613.83 and 613.50. Really, it was the other way around. It was sloping upward, so starting at 613.50, and by the end of the day, price would have been, or that trend line would have been at 613.83. I end up putting this on the board as just two levels. In my mind, I was picturing it as a zone because that's what it was. I want to see if price would get above that. That's what I said here. So if price would get above that, they could go higher. If they would get below 613, that would give the chance for the bears to go down. So we'll look at that in a minute, and that should explain why I did not take the trade at the trend line or at that little area between 613.83, 613.50. because I wanted to see what price would do. So they finally did get above the former all-time highs back in February, and while they did come down later in the day, they closed pretty strong for the day and definitely pretty strong for the week. We'll come back to the daily chart and talk about what happened, but here were the levels. This trend line I'm talking about, the lower trend line, would have started at 613.50 and worked its way up to around 613.83 by the end of the day. So when price came into it at 9:45, after 15 minutes, it would have been above it. I did not mess with this. I waited to see what price would do. When they got up to this 614.77, I went short, well, willing to sell again if they went higher. I ended up selling a little bit in the middle of this area and got a base hit. But if you're playing by the rules, what would you have done? Well, first of all, 614.77, the operating level would have been 614.72 because we like to add a 5-cent buffer. If I can get it right there. Well, they came up to a high here of 614.66 within 10 cents. Pulled away just enough for a small base hit, 4 points or so, and so you wouldn't really want to trust that level, or you just want to sell higher up. But the point is, that's a no trade. It's a near miss of the operating level there. So that first level would not have triggered a trade, so no trades there. Obviously, this level was important for a while, and they did not get close enough here to 615.82 or 615.77 with a 5-cent buffer for this to be kind of a consolidation. But when they kind of come up within 20 cents or so, or within 20 cents and pull away, that's kind of a good sign that price is probably going to go higher when they get to it. So you could have sold a little higher up if you wanted to, just be on the safe side, maybe not pull that level down 5 cents and just sell it for 615.82. But either way, if you waited this one out, they would have given you a base hit on the way back down as price fell. And even being out of the money, there was no fumble signal given at this level. So there is a base hit there, playing by the rules. They came down to 614.77. Now, I would look at this. I was nowhere involved in the market back at this point. I was out by the time I got my trade over here, which we'll look at in a minute because I do have a recording of it. But after seeing them bounce here on the long side several times, 614.82 is 5 cents toward price as they're coming down. So they bounced several times, including almost here within pennies. Now, neither one of these durations was enough time. I like to give them 20 minutes or more to come back into a level. I'm looking at this as attempts and tests at this level. They bounce, so when they come back into it again, I'm not going to trust this. I would not want to trust this considering what they did over here, so not going to count that as a trade. And once again, this was a trend line. Probably would have hit it and bounced pretty cleanly. I really should have drawn this as a trend line in the morning. Obviously that whole area was important, but I'm really not going to count this whole area because it was more of a reference to see, are they going to get above or stay above this or get below 613. Remember I said if they can get below 613 they would fall. Well, look what happened. Here's 613. I'm kind of hovering right at 613. Spent some time there. Once I got below, they dropped quite a bit. They were on their way down anyway. But they closed the day pretty strong, a net positive for the day. And we'll come back and look at the daily, the weekly, and the monthly chart. But first, let's look at the trade that I took. So here's the time. It's almost 9:30. Market opens. I'm recording this. I just want to let this thing run without scrubbing ahead, just to show you that after 15 minutes had elapsed, I chose not to get involved with this area where this trend line was. Just wanted to see if they would get above it. So I'll let this thing go. Notice the time, 9:45, 9:46. So when I make those levels dotted like that, that's kind of my indication that they're done. I'm not going to mess with them for the rest of the day, or at least on the short side, like this. But I sold 4 in the vicinity of 614.77, and you'll see this change to 6. I ended up selling 2 more, kind of up here somewhere, just at the market. So that put me short 6, and I could have just taken the entire 6 contracts off at 3 or 4 point base hit, but I really wasn't sure how far they were going to come down, so I took 5 off and trailed 1 and just got stopped out at a tick or 2. So you'll see the 875 never came down at this point. They did later in the day, but I just wanted to get done early on a Friday. So I took they stopped me out here with a remaining contract, $37.50. So it gave me $900 and something. That's it. So that was it for me. And I don't know what happened to my clock, but it was around noon or so when I stopped recording, closed up shop, and went home. Actually went out of town on a kind of a working vacation for the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to try to record when I can and trade when I can. But anyway, that was Friday's activity. And over on the logs, you can see what would have happened. Here's the notes. 64.17. We talked about that near miss, not triggered, and a base hit on 615.82. At that point, would have really been no more trades if you were being conservative, as I explained earlier. So you can take a look at all the metrics, see where you would be at this point in the year if you were trading by the rules that I have on the strategy. And then my trades over here, the Sam's trades, I ended up trading 614.77 and took just a little over 3 points, $912 and so before commissions and fees. So back to the daily chart. So the former high back in February was 613.23. Might as well put a line there. So here's 613.23. We had a weekly close, pretty strong on the week. Timing is pretty important, by the way. They're well above the moving averages on all the time frames, at least all the larger time frames. But I just want to point out something on the monthly chart. So we have one more day. That's tomorrow, Monday, the 30th. One more day of the month. So when they came down, I'll zoom in here a little bit. When they came down here in April, this whole area was good support. Like there's a breakout area here, kind of hovering, and there's a 50-period moving average below. Looks like the bottom's going to fall out. A lot of red on the screen at this point. They came up short of all this and took off. So it gave us a nice big tail candle on higher than average volume. Normally, you would see them retrace some of this move before they would go higher, but this was pretty bullish behavior considering they didn't do any retracement, and just immediately the next month in May took off and went higher. So it's really no surprise that we're coming up to the end of June and they're still pretty strong. And they just slightly got above the all-time highs, which is easier to see here on the daily chart. Although during the day, on the hourly chart, you can see they pulled back. That's what this looked like. And just tried pretty hard to get above, closed above. That's pretty strong. And where they're at now, I believe, is back to the close. Well, this was on Fridays. I'm not sure what the futures are doing at this point. I'm studying it right now for tomorrow's game plan. But we just want to talk about what they could be doing. I mentioned in the morning's game plan that it's kind of difficult, or just makes it more difficult, to find levels of overhead resistance when they're in uncharted territory. It's possible. There's ways to do it. There's some trend lines up there. Like, for example, here's a high back in December, made another high. That kind of gives us something there. Let's do that again. Same high. Skip over this one, and let's lock onto this one back in February before they dropped in a big way. That gives us another trend line. So these will be levels most likely if and when price gets up there, and some other retracements and extensions we can talk about. Not retracement, but definitely extensions. So I keep mentioning this timing thing. Here's the weekly chart. Everything looks really strong, and they could go higher. The bulls definitely could have a destination higher up, but it would not be out of the question for there to be some type of pullback and a reset just to kind of even things out based simply on timing, how long it's taken them to get to where they're at from this most recent run here on this weekly chart. So this could take time, could take a week or two. I'm not saying they're going to drop out, but there's going to be some uncertainty probably up here somewhere. So that's just my take, kind of in a macro perspective, and we're going to narrow these things down, get more tradable levels, more precise levels for the morning and going forward. Holiday weekend coming up, so we have a partial week, and things tend to be slow this time of year, kind of the summer doldrums, the summer grind. So we'll see what happens, but it's just interesting to see where they're at this point in time. Could be pivotal. We'll see. They're going to break out and go higher, or they're going to stall out and go sideways, or they're going to pull back. Obviously, at any point in time, the market can do one of those three scenarios. So I'll be back tomorrow morning with new levels and a new game plan, and put them out there for those of you who choose to use them in your trading. I hope it helps. At least it gives you some type of roadmap for the morning session. That's the way I look at it. In the meantime, thank you for watching. I hope you found some value. I will talk to you in the next recap video. Have a great rest of your day.